So I recently made the decision to switch from writing fantasy-focused books to writing romance-focused books. And I know there are some people out there who are wondering, A, why I did this, B, whether or not this is going to mean I'm going into dark romance or romantasy because those are the popular genres right now. And also, for those who know me, probably like, what do you have to add to romance? And so, let's talk about it. Let's start with my history with romance, because I'm not an avid romance reader currently, at least not traditional romance. I wasn't quite the snobby kid growing up who turned their nose up to romance books like some kids did. I didn't quite see the appeal of romance books growing up, but my grandma read some, and so did my mom. The thing is, I was definitely surrounded by, my grandma loves her murder mysteries, and my grandpa loved his action adventures, and my mom loved her fantasy books, especially anything vampire focused. My mom loved her vampire books, and most of the guys in my family loved fantasy and comic books. So romance wasn't really a genre I was ever fully introduced to. On top of the fact that there wasn't a lot of romance in my life. We'll get into that later. I didn't really get into reading romance books until I'd say the last couple years. And even then, I still haven't really read a lot. But I made a realization, and that's the fact that most fan fiction is romance. So we don't normally put genres to fan fiction, right? You wouldn't look at, say, a Harry Potter fanfic and go, oh, this is a fantasy genre fanfic. You wouldn't look at a Star Wars fanfic and go, oh, that is a sci-fi fanfic. We don't assign genres to fanfic the way we do to traditional books. But growing up reading and writing fanfic for as long as I did, I've been writing it for probably close to 2 decades now. A majority of the fan fiction out there either has an overarching romance plot that is the main focus of the fanfic, or a sub-romance plot, which is the primary underfocus of the fanfic. So, you have some that have bigger arcing stories, like I said, for, Harry Potter and Star Wars fanfic, that's usually the overarching story of the original canon, but underneath that, you have your romance plot as well. There's a lot of ex-reader fics, so many ship fics out there you would not believe, but romance is inherently tied to fanfiction, and it really crossed my mind recently that I don't read traditional romance books, but by God, do I read a lot of romance. Almost every fanfic I read is a romance main plot. The romance is integral to the story. Most every fanfic I've ever written, the romance is the integral part of the story. I realize there is a stronger calling for me with romance than there was with fantasy. While I do love my fantasy books, and I love my story building in them, and I have this one book idea I've been working on since I was 10 years old that's I think I've narrowed one, I've got 2. I've got one that's a duology fantasy and one that's a trilogy fantasy that used to be one idea that's split into 2 different books. Those are still books someday I may write, but even those books have an integral romance to them. And so do most fantasy. The thing that I find interesting about romantasy becoming such a big genre now is that a lot of fantasy books have had romance subplots, or at least in a lot of the fantasy books I read growing up. Romance was still integral to those stories. So romantasy really does feel like a natural progression, especially with more women getting into fantasy, because as much as I hate to say it, women do crave romance, especially in this society right now. A lot of us are not getting it in the ways that we would want. Our partners are not meeting us where we're at. We can't find partners. It is hell out there right now for dating. It makes sense that this is kind of the trajectory that fantasy is going now, with romantasy being so big. But I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm going to be writing romantasy. I'm definitely not writing dark romance. I have my own traumas and triggers, and there are some people who find those books comforting. I am not one of them. Those are neither of the genres I'm necessarily going to be focused in. I'm more focused in occasional fantasy romance, but more contemporary romance. I love contemporary fiction. That has become my favorite genre. My favorite book, Just Listen by Sarah Dessen, is a contemporary fiction book. And when I read that back in middle school, that's when I kind of took notice of the contemporary fiction genre. And now mixing that with my love of the romance genre, it basically makes so much sense because that's contemporary romance is what almost all of my fanfic has ever been. Almost every fanfic I've ever written has been a contemporary romance. So transitioning that into my books just makes sense. That's why I'm rewriting my very first book as a historical romance, is what my first book is. It has its fantasy elements to it, but it is mainly a historical romance, because the romance was the main plot of the book to begin with. I toned it down when I translated it from fanfic to book, because I'm like, this is now a fantasy book, I need to focus on the fantasy element of it, which is the opposite of what I should have done. I still love Blood of the Coven, that is still my baby, but the sequel to Blood of the Coven, when I do get around to writing that, will probably also have more of a romance focus than a fantasy focus. And as for Planet 737, that was my dabble into sci-fi and a test with it, and as much as I love sci-fi is hard to write, and I learned that through 737, and I'm good. I've written my sci-fi book, maybe someday I'll write another one, but it's not that time for me right now. I'm gonna be putting my focus onto romance because that is where, I feel that spark in me. I started writing a fanfic recently. Do not go looking for my Tumblr, y'all don't need that. I started writing fanfic again recently, and I realized that was sparking more joy than trying to figure out plot lines for my epic fantasies. And it kind of clicked in my head. Oh, my bread and butter is romance. Now, to bounce around questions here, because this kind of trails perfectly into this, of my history with romance and dating. Now, I identify as demi-bisexual, and for those of you who don't know, demisexual is a part of the asexual spectrum. And demisexual, there are several different ways I have tried to explain this to people, and there are just some people who will never understand it, but it basically means that I do not feel sexual attraction at all until I feel like I have formed an emotional connection with someone. And sometimes even then, I still don't feel sexual attraction. There still are occasions where I feel so deeply emotionally, romantically invested in someone, and I still won't feel sexual attraction. And so for demisexuals, the key thing is I need to be emotionally invested with this person. I need to feel that romance with them. And it's not a choice. A lot of people will look at you and say, oh, but a lot of people just choose this. And I'm like, no, I do not have sexual attraction until that switch is flipped. It is turned off. I believe I saw somebody describe it as you are asexual until that switch is flipped, until you meet a person that triggers it. Until that moment, you are asexual. It is not a choice. The bisexual of it comes from the fact that bisexuality was the first sexuality I settled on, and it was the one that I felt the most comfortable in for a long time before feeling comfortable enough to branch into asexuality, but also because there is no gender preference for me. Once I feel that emotional connection, it doesn't matter who you are, that sexual attraction can kick in. And so that makes it hard in and of itself, dating. Being on the asexual spectrum is hard right now. In the culture we live in, especially in Western society here in America, being asexual is rough in the dating market. But because I didn't know that when I was younger, I spent a lot of time thinking something was wrong with me. Because when all my friends were going boy crazy and all my friends were dating or losing their virginities, I was sitting back like, oh, I don't think I experienced sexual attraction until I was 18 with my first girlfriend. I do not believe before that I ever experienced it. I had crushes, obviously. There was this blonde-haired, blue-eyed kid in 5th grade that stole my fucking brain all the way through high school. I had a crush on him all the way till my first girlfriend. I still had crushes because I still have romantic attraction. But there was never any sexual attraction. And I definitely have learned over the last couple of years what I misconstrued growing up and signals I probably missed between friends and me and partners and stuff that I just never clocked because I didn't know any better. I still remember the first time I was like, 11 or 10 reading a book and it had a sex scene in it, and I was so shocked and paralyzed. A, that my mom didn't vet the book well enough beforehand. My mom's the one that recommended the book to me, and she did not vet it properly. And B, just, I was like, oh, this is a thing? I'd never thought about it at that point. I really, really hadn't. And so for me, growing up, not having that and not being on the same wavelength as a lot of the girls my age, it made any kind of dating hard. And it made a lot of people look at me differently. Especially, like, I was already bullied for other things, the curly hair, the tan skin, growing up in a white community as a mixed race kid, whole other story for a different day. While I don't have a lot of experience in dating, there was a period where I was somehow mixed up in the weirdest friend group, love triangle, queer, like the most queer friend group you can ever think of. It imploded. There's still a couple of us that are friends, but the two girls that I had dated at the time just absolutely ghosted me, and I was definitely heavily invested in them. And it took me a couple of years to get over it. I'm sure a lot of other queer people can relate to this and know this experience well because it's so universal in a lot of high school queer friend groups. I've heard so many other stories like this. But even though those relationships were very short-lived, they were very impactful, and it made me realize that more than romance, what was important for me was self-love. So I spent the next few years going on a self-love journey, a journey of self-discovery and kind of figuring myself out. We now come to now where I am 29, making the decision to be a romance author, and I realized that I'm at the point where I am ready and open to start dating again. It is obviously still kind of rocky. I mean, I still live with my mom and my best friend, who is a guy, and I know that some guys are not going to take well to that. That'll be a whole other issue, but like, the point I'm trying to make here is, I don't have a lot of personal experience, but I have learned a lot from people. A big thing that I struggled with on my self-healing journey was learning that I can still be loved while healing. I definitely felt at the start of my journey, especially after the messy breakup when I was 19, I really felt that because I wasn't healed, I didn't deserve to be in a relationship and that nobody would want to date me. And I sat with that for years thinking that, okay, I need to work on myself because if I don't, I'm never gonna date again. And in reality, I've learned that that is not the case. You can have and be in relationships while you are working on yourself. And I want to show the nuances of romance and dating in this modern day and age in my books. Obviously not with my first one because it's a historical romance, but that's to get me started. This is resetting my footing on how I should have stepped off the boat into this whole new career. And I want to take these experiences that I'm going to be having going forward because, like I said, I'm single, I'm open to dating now, and I'm not going to share all the details. We're not going to turn this into a complete parasocial thing. I feel like this makes the most sense to share little things with you here and there, but obviously not super important things. No names, no faces, no nothing like that. At least not until I'm super serious about someone and if they're ever comfortable being on camera, because while yes, I would prefer to date somebody who also has an online presence, also is somewhat in the public eye and knows like the gist of doing this, there's always the chance that I'm going to date somebody that's just a typical 9-to-5 worker who does a day job. Somebody who's not in the creative field. That is also highly likely, and I'm not going to pressure them into doing this. But I'm definitely wanting to share my experiences with you guys as I open myself up to romance, to dating and everything. And as I let myself experience these things that for a while there, I thought I was not allowed to experience. Because I'm 29 and I'm still young. No matter what people say to me, I'm still young. And I have so much of my life ahead of me, and I have spent the last decade trying to like fix myself and orient myself in a way that I'd be quote unquote worthy of love, because that's how it's always been framed to me culturally. But that's not the case. And I really, really want to showcase that through my writing, which is what I'm hoping to bring to the romance genre. I don't want to do the big epic romanticities. I don't want to do the heavy dark romances. I want to show realistic romance. and realistic scenarios. Mostly. I mean, there's tropes for a reason. There was only one bed. Oh, we're snowed in. Listen, tropes are there for a reason, and they work wonders. And sometimes in real life that shit happens. It's wild. This just feels like the perfect next journey for me, because this feels like the next step in my life. Obviously, romance is not going to be my focus. My career still is, for the most part, my focus. But more than my career, more than my education, what I'm realizing my focus actually is just living life. This is something I've been going through over the last year. I've been talking to a lot of my friends about this stuff. Some of my friends are in very different places, obviously. We're all going through our own journeys, but a couple of my friends are kind of in the same boat that I am, where we're like, okay, we've realized these things about ourselves, like chronic illness and depression and mental health struggles. But now that we've clocked these things and we see them and we know them, we want to figure out how to live with them and continue to live our lives with them and continue to let ourselves go onto this next journey, because for a lot of my friends, we kind of had this idea that we have to, like I said, either be healed or finish this next step before we can go on to something else. And that's just not the case. That's not how life works. Things are intermingled and intermixed. Romance comes when you least expect it. I know we all hate hearing that, especially as a chronically single girl like me. Haven't had a date since I was 19. You get wrapped up in this annoyance at the advice people give you, but there is something to be said for manifestation and like being open to these things. Because sometimes you are subconsciously pushing away opportunities without even realizing it, because there is some inner work that needs to be done. And while not everything in this last decade of my life has been super productive at getting me healed, there are a lot of little pieces that I have uncovered and healed and worked with myself. The biggest one being my self-esteem with how I look. That has been a huge issue for me. Body dysmorphia coming out of being anorexic is so hard. And also like this deep-rooted fear of the worry that I have so much backstory and issues that no one wants to deal with it. But then, honest to God, I think one of the things that changed my mind on a lot of stuff with romance, and I don't know if this will be an uplifting story for any of you out there, but the thing that changed my mind was my brother and his girlfriend. My brother and me both had a pretty rough childhood. It was not fantastic, and we both came out of it a little fucked up. When he went off to college, he met his current girlfriend. They've been together close to, if not a decade now. In the same amount of time I've been chronically single, my brother's had his girlfriend. Watching the two of them both work on their healing journeys together, and not like, there was always this fear in me that like, if I work on my healing journey with somebody, we're gonna come out and be different people. Because that's happened with so many of my friends, where we both get to the end and we're like, we're not good friends actually, and we go our separate ways. Usually not nicely. But seeing the two of them still a decade later, learning new things about each other, working with each other to work through difficulties, learning to communicate with each other, and just overall having one of the healthiest relationships I have ever seen, all while not being the best versions of themselves at the time they met, really just healed something in me. I went back to visit family this past Christmas, and I stayed at their apartment because I love my grandma and I missed her dearly. I could not stay in her house. There were too many other people there. My brother's apartment was just me and them and the cats, and it was so nice and chill. But really seeing them on their own in their own place and truly getting to see their relationship made me realize that, oh yeah, if my brother can heal and date and still have a partner who sticks by him while he figures it out, then I can have the same thing too. And so, well, no, I'm not going to be super actively searching for romance. I am going to be more open to it if an opportunity arises. Especially because with me working on Searching for Home, getting ready to publish it, having to promote it as a romance book, I'm gonna be opening myself up to a lot of stuff romantically, because I have to think about it more. I have to really get in the headspace of being in relationships and working through tough situations. And while yeah, I can pull from some family experiences, sometimes I am just gonna have to sit with those emotions and be like, if I was in a relationship, what would this be like? And then from there, I can build my stories off that. So on the off chance that my brother is watching this, because I know he has my YouTube channel, I love you, and I love your girlfriend. The both of you are so amazing. And you two have definitely helped heal me in ways that I didn't even realize I needed. Which is the other thing I want to say. For those out there who are worried about being in a relationship for the first time after a long hiatus or after like traumas and everything, like romance and your romantic intimacy is not something that can be healed by yourself. You do have to go out and date to figure out your triggers, to learn how to grow past what you've been through. Like, I know for a fact when I start dating, whether or not I get lucky like my brother and find the one right away or not, there's gonna be bumps in the road because there's gonna be stuff that I could never have even thought of that are gonna come up in the relationship because it can't come up until I'm romantically involved with somebody. And as it stands right now, the only person I have romantic feelings for is like crushes on celebrities. That's it. That's all I got right now. So the world is wide open to me when it comes to dating right now. To kind of summarize and kind of come back down, because I wrote notes down. I tried my best to keep on track, but I love to talk and I love to ramble, and this is the dangerous thing about me recording without a script. The why I'm switching to romance is because I realized that it is kind of the genre that has always been calling to me since I was a kid. Fanfic was my favorite thing to write, and when I started it again recently, I felt that spark. So I'm rewriting my first book with a romance focus instead, and then we're gonna go from there because I already have ideas for other books and other romance ideas and stuff. What my genre focus is gonna be more contemporary romance, more realistic romance, not your romanticities and your dark romance, something a little bit more down to earth and realistic. Obviously, there may be dark topics, there may be heavy stuff, there may be really happy stuff, but it's kind of an ebb and flow with different things, and we'll work through that with each of my books. It'll depend on the book. It will be adult romance in that sense because I write for adults, not for teenagers. I don't want to write young adult fiction. That's not my bread and butter. And while my journey with romance has not been the best so far, I am opening myself up to more romance in the future and to dating and sharing some of those experiences that I have with you guys in the least parasocial way I can possible. Like I said, no names, no faces, no nothing until I know I'm serious about a relationship. That may be years and books down the line. But I want to experience what I'm writing about is the thing. And I also realize that I deserve that. I don't need to hide and wait until I'm a perfect person to start dating. I think I covered everything for you guys. If you have any questions going forward, please comment down below. Like this video if you enjoyed it. Click the subscribe button to stay up to date on what I'm doing with my book and everything. I should have another update coming out soon, hopefully. I have finished reworking the plot of the book. Now it's just getting to writing the book. So discipline is not my friend, but we're gonna try really hard because I wanted to get this book out before the end of the year, and it's already almost the end of July. So I'm running on a tight schedule here. The message I just want to leave off for you guys is that you do not have to be healed to be in a relationship. You do not have to wait to find romance. Be open to it, and it will make its way towards you in the most hated phrase ever, divine timing. I hate it, but it's true. It really, really is.